All right, so we're on and we're recording, correct?
Yes.
All right, so I'll open the planning board meeting for Wednesday, August 19th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. and we have quorum. I'll read the Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, MGL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on a number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Bridgewater Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest possible. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time. This meeting is being recorded, and within 48 hours, we will post a link of the recording on the town's website and/or the town's social media page. The following members of the Bridgewater Planning Board are participating remotely. Patrick Driscoll, that's myself, the chair, Raymond Jemian, the vice chair, Jean Garino, the clerk, and Michael McDonald. Stephen Geller is not with us this evening. During the meeting, all votes of the board will be taken as roll call votes. The following Bridgewater town staff will also be participating remotely. Tonight we have Elijah Romulus, who's the assistant town planner, and Leslie Dorr, the office administrator. At this time, everyone's mic is muted. The board's mic will be unmuted through the whole meeting, and as items appear on the agenda, the project's representatives' mics will be unmuted. If the project is a public hearing and allows for public comment, we ask that you use the chat feature to ask your question by listing your name and address in your question. The chair will recognize the questions in order. You can also use the raise my hand feature in the participant menu, and you'll be unmuted when the chair recognizes you. Again, please state your name and address before asking a question. If you are on the phone, you may dial *9 to raise your hand. So that being said, the first public hearing that we have this evening is for Lot 84 Fruit Street, also known as 0 Pleasant Street, by Claremont Bridgewater LLC. This is a special permit site plan. It's a proposal for an office warehouse building for distribution with parking lots and associated parking, with a parking lot and associated parking on map 83, lot 84. And Mr. Ramos, can you just confirm that we received or have notification that green cards have been sent out to the abutters?
Yes, the applicant sent that this morning.
Okay. And then would you mind reading the public hearing notice if you would, Jean, have it to open the public hearing?
Yes. Just 1 second. The Bridgewater Planning Board will be conducting a public hearing on August 19, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. on application by Claremont Bridgewater LLC for a special permit under Section 9.6 and site plan approval under Section 9 to be located off Fruit Street Extension, Assessor's Map 83, Lot 84. The proposal is for an office warehouse building for distribution with parking lot and associated parking. Copies of the plan may be requested by emailing ced@bridgewaterma.org. A recording of the meeting will also be posted to the town's website within 48 hours after the meeting ends.
Okay, and we really don't have any department comments to read in other than your narrative, which is pretty similar to Silva Engineering's narrative of the project. So just for the record, that we did receive the application and the design objectives and narrative from Mr. Silva's office. So if we're good, I'll open it up to the representatives to make their presentation. Can you do that, Elijah?
Yes. I guess whoever would like to speak, please unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ed Brennan. I'm an attorney with an office in Taunton, and I represent the applicant. As the board, I'm sure has seen from their preliminary view of the plans, The proposal is to build a 103,000 square foot building on this site to be used what's now commonly referred to as flex space. And what that means within the industry is that the building can actually be divided up amongst numerous different entities, and the walls can actually be moved and partitioned to give customized area to the particular tenants. It is a spec building, so we are putting it up without any tenants at hand at this time. However, we have geared the design towards the uses that are allowed in your zoning bylaw on the table of uses for section 6.3, paragraph G4 and G5 and 6, as well as the uses that are allowed within the Plan Development District itself under 9.6. The uses could vary from some distribution to a medical devices to R&R to light manufacturing. Right now, the proposal is we've designed it with the parking area to come up with a generic combination of proposed uses. And we, as you can see from the correspondence from the town planner's office, the site itself does comply and conform to the zoning requirements set forth for a plan development. As you all may, I'm sure you know, this entire, what I call the Claremont site, is a zoned plan development district. And this particular parcel, lot number 8, is within that district. However, it's accessed from a different route or a different roadway from the rest of the site. The balance of the site is accessed from Lakeshore Center, the main drive going into the current office buildings and apartments. This access to this particular lot, which runs right along Route 24, is by way of Old Pleasant Street and Fruit Street, and a right-of-way that was taken by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts when certain roadway configurations were laid out in previous years. So otherwise, this site would have been cut off from access from what was Old Fruit Street. So we have a right-of-way that gives us the right to use it for roadway purposes and utilities, and we have our frontage on Old Pleasant Street. So as I think the planner's office noted, we conform to the zoning requirements. I think the most instructive sheet to look at on the plans is sheet 4, which shows the footprint of the building. It shows the parking areas, and it shows one of the 2 drainage basins, the one on the west side. That gives you a pretty good view of what the site would look like and how the parking and drainage would be configured. Mr. Silver's here tonight from Silver Engineering. He's the civil engineer who's designing the project, and he could probably touch on some of the engineering and how the drainage might be handled, and address any concerns that the board might have at this time in that regard. I do understand that your engineering review is not completed and that we don't expect to complete this presentation tonight, but we thought it important to open it up, give an overview to the board, and get some initial feedback on the site from the board. With that overview, would the board care to have any questions of myself or Mr. Silver?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of general questions, if I may.
Sure, Mr. Jimmy. Do we want to let Mr. Silver present the site plan first, or do you want to ask the questions first? Or?
Whatever you say.
If they're site related, maybe we should let Mr. Silver present first, and then maybe that'll clear some of them up or actually create some more. So if you're okay with that, if you want to ask your questions, I'm fine with that as well.
Well, I just had 2 quick questions. One, I'm still on, is the entrance actually at the end of Fruit Street? That's where the entrance is?
That's correct.
It's not in, I know it's shaped like a little anvil. It's not the handle at all. It's coming in, it's the end of Fruit Street, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's one answer. The second is, how treed is the area? I noticed that from Fruit Street is fairly treed. Is it treed inside also?
Yes.
I would have to defer that to Mr. Silva.
Yes, it is a fairly wooded lot.
And how many acres do you intend to cut down?
Well, as you can see, we're pretty well changing the site up to the 25-foot no touch area. So we're pretty much altering most of that wooded area.
Altering meaning cut down the trees.
Yes.
Just let me throw this out to you. We're not to that point yet, but on a couple other projects, one in particular, the developer is planning to cut down 14 acres of trees, and they intend to gift the town a cash amount so that the town can use that money specifically for planting trees elsewhere in the town. I just throw out whether would you be open to that in this development also? And you don't have to answer that right now. I'm just saying that I think that's pretty important. If you're going to cut down a large number of trees, that the town be able to plant more trees to make up for that elsewhere in town.
Are you at liberty to disclose what those numbers look like on the other project?
I'm not sure I am. I know what they are. I know it was based on a formula by the state, I believe, where you determine the number of trees for the acreage cut down, and the formula comes up with an amount.
What project would that be?
If I may, I can send you a copy of what exactly the previous case that Mr. Jamian's talking about, what the numbers were.
Is it, did they, just out of curiosity, did they value the lumber as a marketed commodity, as what that lumber would be worth at a sawmill?
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to take a look at that and sit down with the owner.
Yeah, I just like you to consider that, please.
Sure, yep, no problem.
Mr. Jimmy, are you all set?
Those are my two general questions at this point. I think when we get the final evaluation, there may be more.
Mr. Silva, would you like to make your presentation?
Certainly. I mean, as far as the proposed project, it's 103,000 square foot building, as you see on the plan. The access is parallel to Route 24 off of, which is now called Fruit Street, but it was originally Pleasant Street. So it's when Route 24 came through in the late 50s, the state cut off access to this land and provided for this 50-foot access way adjacent to the layout. So that driveway or improvements, which we call Fruit Street Extension, is basically going to connect into the land that is owned by Claremont. And you can see that you can see where the solid line is on the drawing, where the parking begins. Just before that, you can see where the driveway crosses from the right-of-way into the actual site itself. So that driveway coming in, or access road, is a 24-foot road coming in, and it will feed and allow for circulation within the site itself. It also will be where utilities will be extended. In this case here, we will be reaching back as far as Pleasant Street at 104, coming all the way down Fruit Street with a new water line, a sewer line that connects into the sewer line that's there. And we will be also coming in and extending natural gas into this site. So there's a lot of utility work to bring in to serve this building. And when we do that, we'll be obviously trenching the existing Fruit Street all the way from Pleasant Street all the way into the site. And what we plan to do is to, once the trenching is all done, is to actually repave the entire section from Pleasant Street into the site. So, you know, that'll show. I think we're just getting now where the actual gas lines would be located in the street. We should be getting that from the gas company, but it basically will, you know, help along that way. I know that there is an existing water line in Pleasant Street, which became Fruit Street. That's a line that we were going to use for looping water. So we're going to have a line coming out of the site tied into the old line, and then we will have a new line going down all the way to Pleasant Street. So in effect, we will have a better circulation of water into this area. That we, you know, obviously, we will get comments back from the water department as it relates to that improvement. As far as the site itself, it drains, it's graded so it goes basically from Route 24 in an easterly to westerly direction. Like east, it actually goes more southwesterly from Route 24. And so we're not changing the natural grade of the site itself. We are capturing the water and we're cleaning the water first with oil grit separators and sediment forebays before we route them into detention basins, which we then will ultimately discharge into the adjacent wetlands, which is a very extensive wetland system. There is no other direct connection over to the other section of the planned development district. So all this site is self-sustaining in terms of it being developed in the site. Now, in doing so, we will be going by 2 state facilities that are along Fruit Street. And up until this point, I would say that the state has kind of used Fruit Street like it was like a driveway, like their own private driveway, because they've had all their operations along there all these years. In fact, at the end of what was Pleasant Street or Fruit Street, they actually, it's all, you see now that you don't see the pavement there. That's because they've been stockpiling material at the end of it over the past 40 years or whatever it is. So that material has to be taken out of there in order to get to the access point, which the state had deeded to this property. And so that work will be done as part of this project. Aside from that, I mean, I think everything else is pretty straightforward as far as how we approach the design, both from a pedestrian circulation within it, the 197 parking spaces to serve the office component of this project, and the loading docks to the rear of the building itself. So I think that as far as level of detail, as far as I think that is as much of an overview right now, and I would answer whatever particular questions you might have about it.
So, Mr. Romulus, this is why Mr. Silva's on. So your analysis of the site, everything complies except, are we sure that the building's only 38.7 feet from the front setback?
Yeah, I can address that if you'd like.
Sure.
That is correct. We treated that as a side setback.
Yeah, because the front, would that be that triangular piece, correct?
Well, the front is really down next to the commuter parking area of the lot. That's really where the front is.
So that triangular, I'm looking at the plan now, there's a triangular piece that connects to Fruit Street. So you're taking the frontage off of Fruit Street.
That is correct, Mr. Driscoll. That triangle piece is the frontage, correct?
So the building's really probably a couple 100 feet back, right?
Oh, yeah. From Fruit Street. What is shown as Old Pleasant Street. And there is a lot of confusion on Old Pleasant and Fruit. It goes back and forth in that area. But the frontage on a previously signed planning board plan is on Old Pleasant Street.
Okay, so that's there. And then
Old Pleasant really is, and when we say Old Pleasant, we're saying down next to where the commuter parking area is and so forth. That's really that portion of the road.
Wait a minute, can we clear that up? I was confused when I looked at the map. What is Old Pleasant Street?
Okay.
Right now, what is Old Pleasant Street?
Right now, what is referred to as Old Pleasant Street is really the section that connects from Fruit Street over to Pleasant Street, and along it is where the commuter parking lot is.
All right, then is that an actual public way right now?
It is. It has always been a public way. It has never changed status as a public way. It basically, back in the 1950s, the roadway, if you were standing in front of Lakeshore Center on Pleasant Street, and you want to follow Pleasant Street, you would have taken a right where those parking spaces are. You would have continued to the end of that, and the road would have turned to the right, which we now call Fruit Street. It would have went to the end of our project, or the end of Fruit Street, and went across what is Route 24 to the other side where it joins up with Pine Street.
Okay. I just have one more question, Mr. Ramos. I think we all probably agree with it, but you said section 9.655, we should waive that, and it makes sense because of the wetlands, and that's the connecting sidewalks to the different parcels.
That is correct. Just given the type of use and it being cut off by a wetland from the rest of the projects, it just would make sense for the board to waive that.
Okay.
Can we go back to the overview map of it? The original map you had up? We were showing the frontage.
Is it this one?
Yeah. So the area between the Fruit Street and the whatever that, like the handle of the outline, what is that?
The area that's in white that's not shaded.
Yeah, the area in white.
That's the a portion of that is the state land, which they operate the salvage title area, and I think they do some maintenance, stockpiling on that property too.
Isn't that treed though? I drove by there today.
Yeah, that's treat. Well, there's a lot of wetlands. They have a small area that is upland, maybe up to where that blue line is. They use it, and then the back half of it is mostly wetland.
So
They have buildings there.
Yeah, they have buildings.
Okay, I didn't notice that.
So it's like if you took Fruit Street and you took that same line, took a copy of that line and moved it back, about halfway is the usable portion, and then the back triangle that would be left over would be wetlands on the state properties.
So what you're saying, yeah, so you're saying the white area is all state property or partly state property?
It's all, that is
It's all state.
all state property.
Okay.
Now, question.
Mr. Greeno, go ahead.
The traffic that would be coming out of there was something I read today, said the anticipated traffic of this would be around 328 vehicles. But where does that come out? At Fruit Street or Pleasant
Fruit
Street?
Fruit Street.
And there aren't any anticipated signal lights up in that area at all? Anticipated?
I don't think it was that it was enough of a volume to trip a requirement for any kind of signalization there. So that's the intersection that directly opposite is the beginning of Lakeshore Drive,
Yeah.
Lakeside Drive. Which is funny because it really isn't, because it's still technically, it was the original part that was Fruit Street, but they now refer to it as Lakeside Drive. So there was a couple of name changes in there when all these changes took place.
Well, If I may, on Jane's point, if Old Pleasant Street, or the road that's used for parking, is that going to be an access? Are you coming
No.
down that street, going into Fruit Street?
No,
How are you
No.
going to stop people from doing that?
you're not going to stop people from doing it, but it's not practical. It's used, that section of Old Pleasant Street is used like a parking lot for the
I
most part.
understand that, yeah. But what if somebody's coming out on Pleasant Street from Raynham? Why not cut over Old Pleasant instead of going up to Fruit Street? They can do that, what you're saying, right?
It's conceivable that they can do it. The only thing that we could do would be is at the end of that section, because you can see there that the parking spaces are kind of angled
They are.
in there. So you have to come in from that Raynham side. So I would say that at the end of that Old Pleasant, having a no right turn signalization there would not make that a shortcut. You follow what I'm saying? So if
Yeah,
you
but
came
what if
down
you-
Old Pleasant Street from left to right on this map, so if you were going from left to right, when you got down to the end, if you had a no right turn, they wouldn't be able to come to the site.
But people that want to park there would want to turn right
People that want to park where?
in the commuter lot there.
Well, they can do that. They can't turn right to come up Fruit Street though. Why? They wouldn't have any reason to want to come up
Hmm.
Fruit Street. If they're in that commuter lot, they're really coming there. They're going to be taking a left to go back out Fruit Street to go return wherever they were going. They would have no need to go to the right on Fruit Street.
Coming east on Pleasant Street from Rainham, I think the turn on to Old Pleasant Street would probably be the least attractive choice of the two between Fruit Street and Old Pleasant. I just think Fruit Street will lend itself to easier access to this site. But you're right, it's Old Pleasant's a public way. You are correct.
So, any other board questions before we open up for public comment? So, Mr. Romulus, I think we got a few chats. I don't know if we want to start with those and then see if anybody from the public would like to speak.
Yes, so I see the first question from Janet Hansen was, what are we waiving? So there is a stipulation in Section 9 of the Plan Development District that relates to providing pedestrian access to open space areas and the different buildings within the plan development. However, because of the type of use being proposed, as well as the wetlands that kind of split the property from the rest of the projects, the department thought it best to suggest that the board waive that requirement.
Well, that's something we'll take up when we go to vote.
Let's see. So Carlton Hunt asked about the map. I did just bring up another map that kind of more clearly defines Fruit Street versus Old Pleasant Street.
And I think the point there was, could you zoom in on that because it is small? I don't know if I can do that on my own screen or. Okay.
Before you zoom in too far though, you can see the buildings that when Ray was asking about where the buildings are on the other sites, that you can see where the state facilities, all those are state buildings.
Do we have any other chats, Mr. Ramos? If not, we can ask if anybody from the public would like to speak.
Let's see. So there is another comment, another couple comments. So no sidewalk, question mark, that is good. Need wetland.
So,
Need
if
wetlands protection to the max, 100-foot buffer.
so if Mrs. Hanson would like to speak, do we want to ask her if she'd like to speak and we could let her speak?
Yeah. Janet Hanson, if you're there, we see that your hand is raised, as well as Carlton Hunts. So, Janet, if you want to go first.
Okay. Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi. Thank you. Janet Hanson, 665 Pleasant Street, Bridgewater. Everybody forgets they're supposed to do that. I'm just trying to picture with these maps, and I have the town maps too, as to where exactly this is and how close it is to the other lots and how close it is to the wetland. And what are they looking for a special permit? I don't know what the special permit they're looking for, but there is a lot of wetland. I did send a letter. I'm hoping you got it. And there is a lot of wetland and it's protected area. They're supposed to be designated open space by the original agreements, unless something's changed since 2018. But two of the lots are archaeological protected, and also there's the endangered species. I know no one cares about a turtle. You know, a lot of people don't care about a turtle, but I do. But I don't know, how close is this project going to be to the other lots? And are they going to abide by 100-foot buffer, or are they seeking for, you know, let's try to squeeze this in as much as we can? I would like to, obviously I'd like to see it stay open, but I don't have any say over that, but I'd like to protect what's there. So I know I'm going rattling on, but what is the special permit? How close are they going to be to the other lots, protected area? How much are they going to protect the wetland? And are you going to abide to 100-foot buffer for wetland, or are you going to try to squeeze it as close as possible? That's my questions right now. Thank you.
Mr. Silva, do you want to take those, or Mr. Romulus?
Well, I can answer. As far as the special permit, either I or Ed can answer it, but basically we have a special permit requirement as part of the Plan Development District in order to develop any site within the district itself. So that's what the special permit is about. We're here for site plan approval, and as far as what the question about how close we're getting to the 25-foot no-touch area on the site, which is what was agreed upon for the turtle habitat issue. And it is basically the standard that is for any site that is in Bridgewater. So the question about whether or not we're abiding by 100, I don't know any site that's abided by 100. 100 represents the threshold for which you file with conservation for approval of your project. And within that, when you trigger that, you then show what activity you're going to have within that 100 feet. And in all cases, we maintain that we do not do anything within the first 25 feet from the wetlands. And there is activity, mostly drainage, that's in grading and drainage that are outside of the 25 up to the 100. And that's pretty much what you see in here. So when it's done, when the project's done, it's pretty much a grassed area that will be in that 100-foot buffer zone. Because also remember that there is a potential to have a building within 50 feet of a wetlands, but we are considerably further away than that for the closest point to a building. But most of the pavement and buildings are outside of the 100-foot buffer. If you look on this map that's up on the screen now, the yellow line that's there represents the 100-foot buffer zone. So if you look at what kind of activity is there, that's running through a drainage basin, the 100-foot, and down it towards the bottom of the screen, you can see that the 100-foot kicks over into a portion of the paved area down in the, I want to say that would be the southern section of the parking lot, the rear parking lot. So that's how, how it's being utilized. It's everything, there's nothing that's being asked, if you're asking about the special permit, there's nothing here that's being asked to do something different than what is done on other development sites within the town.
Okay. Just one more question if I can.
Sure, and Mrs. Hanson, before you continue, I don't mean to, but we did
No, that's
receive,
fine.
we did receive your email,
Yeah.
which had a letter attached to it, and the date of the letter was August 17th, 2020.
Yes.
I know you asked a number of questions in this, so I just asked that if we could forward it to Mr. Silva, and then, go ahead.
Mr. Driscoll.
Sure.
This morning, I asked whether or not there were any correspondence relative to this project, either by mail and letter or by email. And I do not believe that this was forwarded to us.
You asked Mr. Romulus?
Yes, I did.
Yes, so it was under my impression that we had sent this letter over, but we can send that after the meeting.
And I think Mrs. Hanson asked most of her questions in this meeting, but I just for the record, if we could make that public to Mr. Silver, if you could address it as well, Mr. Romulus.
Yeah, no problem.
Mr. Chairman, one
Sure.
other question that was asked by Mrs. Hanson is how far this was from the remaining development of the balance of the site. And just by example, where this building is proposed to Lakeshore Center, which is the roadway that services the balance of the site, it's probably going to be close to 12 or 1,300 feet away. So it's a long distance between this building and the roadway within the balance of the subdivision. It abuts up to lots 6 and 7, which are vacant at this point. They have not been developed.
Aren't those isn't that where the archaeological site is and the Fox Turtle?
Lot
There
7
are two.
for sure
There are
on
two
an
sites.
archaeological site.
Yes, there are
Lot
two
8 is
sites.
not. This lot is not.
Right.
No, not the
you-
lot that you're building on, but the ones, 83 or lot 7 and 6.
Lot 7, I'm certain, is under review. I'm not sure about lot 6, but lot 7 is the one.
So, but there's protection in place for those. That's what I'm just,
This site is nowhere near those, and both of those sites that were identified as potential archaeological locations have to be cleared. And I mean cleared meaning they have to be evaluated and okayed to be able to be developed. So that's I believe that's 6 and 7.
Right.
Those two sites.
There's
So,
nothing proposed
There's
for
nothing
those lots.
proposed on this.
just hoping protections are in place. So thank you for your time.
Okay, do we have any other public comment, Mr. Romulus, or questions? Anybody?
I know that Carlton Hunt had his hand up. So there's Carlton Hunt, and then there is a James Walsh, and then a Pat Neary, and then I saw Mr. Carney as well.
Okay, so if you could just go through those, please.
Carlton, if you are available, Mr. Hunt.
Yes, I'm here. First of all, thank you for putting the entrance off Fruit Street. I had high concern that you would come in on what I call the little dog leg, that based on this conversation, maybe lot 6 or 7. That is where at least the stone structure that may go back hundreds of, if not 1,000 years ago, is located. I don't know where the second site is. So my first thing is to compliment you on coming in on Fruit Street for this. My second comment relates to the tree removal that was mentioned earlier. There was a program that we found, and I sent it to the planning board, and I used it on another project that basically calculates the value of trees for the amount of carbon they remove annually. So that iTree program doesn't look at the value of the lumber. It looks at the value of the trees against climate change alterations. And that value can be monetized. It's a common practice nowadays. It can be monetized against the amount of carbon removed, the amount of nitrogen removed, that kind of thing. And that's what that program does. I think I had a third point, but I can't remember it now, so thank you.
Okay, we had, who do we have next? Mr. Romulus?
Next is Mr. Walsh. If you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Romulus. James Walsh, 60 Crescent Street. So I just wanted to follow up on what Mrs. Hanson was saying about the archaeological site. Given that this is being developed, that land has been pretty much intact for at least, recent memory, probably several hundred years. And since those two archaeological sites are burial grounds, what kind of pre-work is being done, since this is the first time that land is being excavated, to ensure that there are no other burial sites on the land? And then following up to that, what kind of precautions and measures will be in place during construction in case something like that is discovered?
Mr. Silva, do you want to take that?
Well, yeah,
Mr.
I can say to you is that this site, and in terms of the designation of the areas that are of concern and the ones that are not of concern, goes back to starting somewhere in the mid-'80s when it was, when the whole project was Pilgrim Park, was an office complex, which included this particular site as part of it. But those designations go back to that time period when there was an evaluation of the entire parcel, all the parcels, and then it was identified the two specific areas that needed to have further evaluation. So this site was already cleared at that time, and more recently, through the years, MEPR had cleared this site for development in the last notice of project change that had been submitted, which allowed for the apartments, the Viva apartments, and the second office building that had been constructed recently. So this one was also one of the sites that was cleared by MEPR to say that it was okay to go forward. So they don't have a concern.
The archaeological review under MEPR was extensive, and these are the only two sites they identified as significant. Meaning, when I say these two, I don't mean the one we're on. I mean the other two within the subdivision, lots 6 and 7.
Right.
There was extensive review, and the reports were filed with MEPR, or under the MEPR process.
Oh,
Thank you.
great, thank you. And then for the second part of the question, so what kind of processes are in place in case something is discovered, and what kind of reporting is in place?
I think there's a whole set of regulations that you mandatory reporting if you find evidence of archaeological remains. So that there isn't anything customized to this site. I believe the rules and regulations are already in existence and applicable to all sites, all construction sites.
Mr.
Thank
Walsh, are you all set, Mr. Walsh?
Yes, thank you for the time.
No problem. So, Mr. Romulus, I see a few other people in the chat asking if they can submit questions or comments via email or written. Could you just, on the chat, could you provide where they should send that? So maybe that'll clear up some questions. Mr. Romulus?
Yes. So I did just add the email email ced@bridgewaterma.org. It's in the chat. And then I think there are a couple.
I think we have Mrs. Neri and Mr. County waiting, correct?
Yes.
So would you like to?
Mrs. Neri.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to know if the town of Raynham has been notified about this project in those notices that you send out. You know, conservation, for example, planning board.
Mr. Romulus and Mr. Silva, can you answer? Did you notify the town of Raynham? Do we know if that happened?
I don't have those with me. Those were submitted to Elijah, so I can't say for certain that it's there, but it should be there.
I noticed in the past
Yes,
that
we'll have to review that.
that they have been notified. And since this project is sitting upon the Zone 2 aquifer, it would be extremely important to them to be part of this discussion.
Yeah, they've always been part of all the other previous ones. I know that they've always weighed in where they saw it was necessary to make sure that, we understood their concerns. I remember there was one, I think it was one of the central upland sites that they had commented about use of pesticides or something. I remember they had some criteria, but you got to understand is that the town of Bridgewater years ago, in fact, I remember being part of trying to get the town of Bridgewater to adopt their aquifer protection regulations to apply to aquifers that were out of town. And that's why that's in our zoning maps now, that we actually honor other aquifers with the same protection that we do for aquifers that originate in the town of Bridgewater.
So you can't tell me whether they were notified or not, because I do see that, this building is sitting upon their aquifer or the aquifer, which seems to me to be pretty serious. The couple other questions is there's a tremendous amount of impervious area on this lot, including the roof line and all the pavement. I suspect one of our boards or commissions will check that the percentage is accurate or adequate to comply with our zoning regulations. As far as the archaeological sites, I was reading a lot of the past paperwork that has taken place, and there was a request by the Mass Historical Commission for data recovery to mitigate adverse impacts to the Tome Road site. I'd like to know if that has been done.
I can't answer the status of that, but remember the Tomb Road, and just so those who don't know what that is, we talked about the commuter parking area. If you're on the westerly edge of that commuter parking area, across from that, there's a pathway that goes into the wooded area there. And that tomb site is about maybe less than 100 feet down on the right.
Yes, I've been in there.
So it's no, I'm just explaining it for other people who don't know where it is.
Okay.
Okay, and so it's quite a distance from here, and it's really not connected in any way. There's such a substantial wetland area in between the two. In fact, it's been alleged that that wetland area that's in between is very heavily peat, and even areas where there is quicksand, essentially like quicksand, that you could never traverse across that wetland area, or you shouldn't.
There was also a request by the Mass Historical Commission for a memorandum of agreement when the lots surrounding lots 6 and 7 are developed. And I wonder if that has been done. Is there a memorandum of agreement?
I don't know if you can answer this, but doesn't that relate to 6 and 7?
It says around the area surrounding lots 6 and 7.
Right. So it's not. So the areas of 6 and 7 are held back from being freed up to be able to be developed until that condition is met.
The memo is supposed to be for the outlying areas as well, as the way I read it. I'll go back and read it again if you think I'm incorrect.
I'm not calling you incorrect. I would never do that. But what I would say, I'm smarter than that, Mrs. Neri. But I would say to you that this last notice of project change that went through MEPR basically laid out where you could go forward and where you couldn't go forward. And in particular, Lot 8 was cleared to be able to go forward. So that's, I can tell you that for sure.
I'd love to see that paperwork, Larry.
The MEPR filing was, there was a decision letter from the Office of Environmental Affairs. I don't know if
It's all online. It's all
that's
available.
online.
Yes.
I believe it's online, but if you need a copy of it and you make arrangements with Ashley at my office, we can make you a copy. And if you're wearing a mask, you can come in and pick it up, and otherwise we'll leave it outside the door.
Well, I bet you can email it to me. So I'll make sure I get that information to Ashley.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that's all I have for now, but I'm just hoping that with all of these environmental concerns, this is a very sensitive environmental area, and it just doesn't make much sense to be building this project on top of the aquifer, surrounding all of these delicate areas that we've been trying to protect for years. Thank you for listening.
Next up, Mr. Romulus.
Yes, I think we still have a couple of people. So next would be Mr. Carney. I do see a Melissa Ramondetta and John G.
Okay, so we could ask Mr. Connie to join us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pat Connie, Chairman of Claremont 2 Lakeshore Center, Bridgewater. I wanted to clarify the question that was asked on, is this site heavily wooded? This site was the former camp of the, I may say the wrong name, the Kennel Club. I know it had a different name. But there was a building on this site, and the dog club ran their dogs around this whole area and had a parking area here and a building. So the site was not fully wooded, you know, it had a cleared area for that facility. I also wanted to point out on the open space, of the 170 acres that Claremont owns here, 85 acres will remain forever open space. That's the combination of the wetland areas and the buffers that will be left between the wetlands and the uplands. So, and though that 85 acres is very heavily wooded, and that of course will remain forever open space. I also wanted to mention, Mr. Chairman, the last time I was before your board, you stressed the importance to Claremont of having commercial development. And we listened to that. We built a Marriott Residence Inn Hotel. We built a second office building, which I'm happy to report will provide 400 jobs to Bridgewater. And the combination of the developments we've done on the site pay Bridgewater over $1 million a year in real estate tax and hotel room tax, which I think the residents will realize is keeping down the tax bill on their homes to have this added money. The site is now about half developed, and there's a potential for the town to get another $1 million in taxes once this site is fully built out. So we heard your concern, and that is why we are proposing this development and planning other developments that are commercial in nature, because I know historically Bridgewater has suffered operating deficits because such a high percentage of the tax base in Bridgewater is residential, the school system, and with commercial development, that helps keep the tax rate down for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Connie. Elijah, do we have anybody else?
Yes, we have, the next person is Melissa Raymondetta, if she is online.
Okay.
Good evening, Melissa Raymondetta, 317 Lakeside Drive. Thank you, Mr. Driscoll and members of the planning board for hearing us out tonight. I want to ensure that when you're considering this plan, you remember, because nobody's mentioned it tonight, that this sits directly across the street from Lake Nipponicket. I personally would like to know how this proposed plan for an office warehouse with its loading docks and 197 parking spaces benefit this very special, beautiful, and environmentally sensitive area of town. The proposed site falls directly across from the lake and abuts sensitive wetland areas. And in looking at the zoning map, the area is designated a planned development district, but I didn't see anything about industrial zoning. When I heard the word warehouse, I thought, well, jeepers, doesn't industrial zone means warehouse? Such as the Elm Street Industrial District. So can you please confirm that when this area was designated a planned development district for commercial development, that it included industrial zoning, as this is not clear on the zoning map whatsoever? Why would a warehouse structure with its loading docks and 197 parking spaces be allowed here, right across from the lake? You empty out onto Lakeside Drive and right across just the street we'll be looking at a warehouse. How will requirements also with regard to the Zone 2 Aquifer Protection District be addressed? It appears that a warehouse and a large space as this would require a significant amount of impervious area, which is not in the rules and regulations so far as I could read. My other concern is that it's going to drive a lot of additional traffic to the area as it is now. We've got the highway emptying onto 104, in addition to the other apartment developments and the hotel down the street, which has certainly increased our, makes it a little bit more difficult for us to get out of our street, Lakeside Drive. You know, what will the town do to make this better? You know, and I think my biggest question is, you know, at what point does the town of Bridgewater say enough is enough and insist that developers that want to benefit from our town and the land that it sits on take into account the environment and the surrounding areas when they make their plans? This is this environmentally sensitive area with a lake across the street, and they want to put a warehouse here. What will this proposed plan give back to Bridgewater, its residents and environment? So thanks for the time.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Silver, I'm sorry.
I can address part of that. First of all, I just want to make sure that Melissa, that you understand where this site really is. When you say across from Lake Nip, when this building is built, you will never see it. You will never see this building unless you go all the way down the end of Fruit Street and take a turn and go down into that area, because there is a significant wooded wetland area that is between this site and even remotely close to the lake. So I just want to make sure that you understand that this is not across the street on Route 104. So at least that's the way I was understanding what you were depicting as far as where it's located. And as far as how it's designed, from a stormwater point of view, it's designed to meet the higher threshold that it needs to meet because of the sensitive area that it's in. The oil grit separators, the sediment forebays, the pre-treatment of any runoff that comes from the site has to meet the criteria because of the sensitive area that it's in. So it's not like a project like this is done without consideration of the environment. And as Mr. Connie has indicated to you, of this 160 plus acres of land that is the overall site, it's really less than 50% of it that's really being developed as far as uplands. And so I think that it has been done in a way that has been well thought out over the years. And I think that we obviously are careful in terms of what we do and how we do it in order to make sure that we meet the requirements. And there is a review of everything we do in order to make sure that we do that.
This isn't the first review. This isn't the first review for the site. I mean, the MEPR review on this site has been extensive. It's been taken into consideration the ACEC status of the site, and the state has looked at this every different direction before they would sign off on and issue the MEPA certificate. Plus, we have filings with Conservation Commission. And Larry, you had to develop all of the drainage in accordance with the highest standards of
Correct.
groundwater protection. And this may not be, at the end, it could be a laboratory, it could be a research facility, it could be medical device manufacturing, light manufacturing. This isn't going to be a truck terminal. That's not what it's intended. You all know how the rest of the Claremont site has been developed. They're not going to do anything different on this site. Whatever it is, it's going to be well-designed, well-planned. And even though you won't be able to see it, Larry, you're correct, you might see it from 24. It's going to be well-landscaped and attractive and have good access. So this didn't just pop up out of nowhere. There's been an awful lot of review to get to the point where we could even file this plan. So I think, I want everyone to understand the environment has been in consideration from day one.
Okay, do we have any more public comment, Mr. Romulus?
Yes, there is a comment from John Garrett, or Gaggett. If you are on the line, you can unmute yourself.
He mentioned that he'd be submitting written. If you would like to speak, though, he's more than welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Romulus. I appreciate it. I've been taking some notes. I've done some research. We're 30-year residents of 245 Lakeside Drive. We know Mr. Carney's development history and the promises that he's made to the town. And I have a number of concerns that I really would rather submit via writing as part of this hearing, if that would be okay, sir.
Sure. If you could do it, we will probably continue the hearing to the September 2nd meeting. I don't know if, depending on if that's acceptable with the board, but if you could get the comments in as soon as possible, so Mr. Romulus and the applicant could both address those.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Driscoll. We will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Mr. Romulus?
Let's see. There was Bernice Morrissey.
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, super. So I kind of did a quick outline as people are talking, but I just wanted to discuss what Mr. Silva just responded to Melissa's comment about it not being across the lake. It will be seen from 24, and we'll never see it. Well, we will certainly hear it. We will certainly be affected by it. And the fact that the NIP is across the street, I really live by the saying that we are all connected hydraulically. And there is a culvert that is to the north of the site, right just prior to the park and ride. And I think it's a double culvert. And sometimes it's very active. And my concern, I heard grass was involved for some of the landscaping. That means there'll be fertilizer and nutrients and things like that. And when Mr. Carney spoke about it was the Kennel Club, it's all wooded, natural landscaping. And I just would encourage that be considered rather than a lawn that requires fertilizer and watering, given the site. And this other thing I wanted to mention was Fruit Street is very short. So depending on what goes in there and what type of warehouse work, whatever, when people leave at the same time, that Fruit Street is very short. And if you have, like at 5 o'clock, a lot of cars emptying out and many of them taking left-hand turns to exit, it's going to be backed up and we're going to have a much bigger problem because Park and Ride will be emptying out, people trying to get out of Lakeside. So I hope you're giving that serious consideration. As far as the trees, that it would be wonderful if we're talking about trading trees to put some native trees as a swap up along 104, because all the trees that have come down as a result of the Kearney development, we hear the gun club over in Raynham, we hear things that we've never heard before. The lighting is just really out of hand because we enjoy beautiful night sky here. And it's that type, we've talked about task lighting and downward lighting and lighting that's sensitive to the environment and doesn't freak out the turtles and the frogs and everything. That's important to consider. And I hope if trees could be placed and native trees along 104, that would really enhance what's going on over there. I'm just rushing through. But as far as the the tomb that's over there, it is not that far in the woods. I do know that Mr. Silva mentioned that it might be in quicksand or wetlands. It's very hilly terrain right at that site. So there's a lot of up and down and, it's not a level lot by any means. But I also wanted to share with this group in particular, there's more to stones and in this area. My neighbor across the way has a grinding stone from, her house is a 1600 house, the Bouldries. And I don't know the history of that archaeological tomb. I've photographed it. I have articles about it was done in the 80s. But if it goes back to, however many years ago, but it could be that it's got a greater impact to other stones in properties around the lake. The other thing is snow removal. We got to have a plan for that because when the apartments were being built and the office buildings, there was not supposed to be any snow stored on the property. And I saw myself big trucks trucking in snow, and there was a mountain as high as my house on the back of the property. And snow comes with salt, and I know the state has a salt yard. So I mean, there's a lot of improvements that need to be done there, and there's a lot of considerations, but especially, as was discussed, the ACEC area. I know when the state did one of the perk tests and the review, it was during a drought year, so it might have appeared to be a very dry property. It was 2007. And that was one of the processes that was done that got MEPA review. And I don't think it accurately reflects the water that is supposed to drain and feed into the lake and be a healthy part of the ecosystem that we have here. So that's pretty much what I wanted to comment on, all of those things. And I hope they're all being considered for the welfare of the lake and this area and for the town of Bridgewater. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Silva.
Okay, as far as a couple of those comments, first of all, what the reference to the grass or lawn areas, that's not lawn areas, that's areas of how the drainage basin is actually constructed in order to temporarily store water and let it out slowly into the wetland area. So it's grass areas that over time, some of it takes on sort of a wetland kind of look to it, as it does its job, but it's not creating lawn areas for the site itself. I just want to make sure that you understand that part of it. The other thing was you asked about what was the last comment you were making was about the I lost my train of thought here. The last concern that you had.
No.
Do you know which one it was? I mean, what was the major points were the snow removal, the trees and tree planting about 104,
And
the traffic concerns and the tomb site. The tomb site is really not related to this project. So, I mean, I've heard a lot of comments about that tonight. It's really not related to this site. But I think that if you read some of the previous evaluations and MEPR filings and so forth that are on record, you'll see that there'll be a lot of discussion about that when that site comes forward for development in the future. But that is not related to this area itself. I think that's, I don't know if there was anything else that I could actually address here. But what was the other item?
Well, just one other thought. I'm just, well, the archaeological structure, it'd be a shame if it got plowed under. It'd be wonderful to incorporate it into the landscaping and the natural landscaping and speak to the heritage and all that's gone on here and how this was developed hundreds and thousands of years ago. But as far as my concerns with traffic coming out,
yep,
along with when you have the park and ride, if everybody's leaving at 5 o'clock, we can't get out of Lakeside Drive because before the coronavirus, traffic was starting to back up on 24 exiting. And there's a steady stream that we've never had that before. So there's already, you know, a big increase in the traffic around here from what the construction that's happened already. And part of it might be Raynham's as well, that given that there's 2 housing developments back to back. But basically it's just being kind to the area and improving the, like, I would implore on Mr. Carney's and everyone to improve on what's there in a sensitive way. If you have to develop it, and I know you do, but if you could just be extremely mindful, not just acres, this many acres are developed, this many not, but just in how you go about it so that you can actually contribute to the welfare of Lake Nippenicket, because Lord knows the state isn't doing a lot. And yeah, it needs some help.
Well, I think that, I mean, we will have somebody from McMahon Associates at the next meeting. That's the traffic consultant. So
Okay.
we will have him available at that meeting to be able to handle those issues, because McMahon has done tremendous amount of traffic analysis for the overall project, and in particular this one. So they will be available to answer those questions.
All right.
And as far as, you know, I treat all these sites in a way that I try to be sensitive to how, you know, where this water goes, how it discharges, what occurs. I know you talked about the culverts that go under into Lake Nip. I understand totally how this works.
Yeah.
Yep, there are a series of culverts. One that comes after the commuter parking area that goes crosses Pleasant Street, and then eventually ends up through another culvert into the pond itself. And that is all fed from a huge wetland system, which this ultimately will discharge into, but only after the stormwater has been cleaned. Oh, I know the other issue I wanted to say is, you asked about understanding the groundwater and everything else. I did extensive test pits out here, and it was with the town engineer. We had him come out there to be there when I did the test pits in order to agree on where groundwater, high groundwater is located, so that our designs would meet the requirements for stormwater management. So we do know exactly where groundwater is, and we designed our stormwater system higher so to not be close to the groundwater.
Well, I do understand across all of that land, there are a lot of wells, well sites, and it's very wet land. And the fact that Pleasant Street, 495, all of that has fractured the natural streams that feed into Lake Nippenicket.
Yes,
and
they did.
We need to be very cognizant and aware of the aging process of Lake Nippenicket. And if the streams aren't giving, and I do know, like the culvert I mentioned, it's active on Kearney side, but if you come across Pleasant Street and you go down, it trickles out. It's not feeding into the lake the way it should. So I know the culverts are whole different things and we have aging infrastructure and all that. But that's why I bring that particular one up, because it's very important and it's an opportunity to repair and improve on that.
Yeah, all the
So,
streams that, actually, all the
that's
streams that feed from this property, both here and
Yep.
all the way to the west where the access project is, along the stretch there, I think there are 4 tributary points that head towards the lake. And they are all
Yeah.
intermittent, they are all intermittent streams. They're not perennial streams. And that was already
Right.
agreed to with the DEP. Now, back in the day, before there was a Route 495, I would argue that 1 or 2 of those may have been perennial streams.
I
But
would
the watershed was cut off at that time. A section of the watershed that used to drain towards the lake, now does not drain towards the lake because of 495.
On a side note to that, I understand that, I think it's the Swanton River Watershed has some grant money available to restore stream flow. And I'm actually looking into it myself because of my concern for the lake. And I would hate to see it become stagnant and, you know, all the things that can go wrong with the lake if we aren't watching
The
it.
biggest issue with the lake is that it's controlled by West Bridgewater. At the Canoe Club is the sole way in which the level within the lake is controlled. And it's somewhat arbitrary, and it's done by flashboards that are put in or taken out by Chris Inatelli, who's in charge of it. And he basically makes adjustments, seat of the pants, by whoever's screaming the loudest. If the
Well, you
farmers
know-
are saying there's too much or too little water, he's putting in boards or taking out boards. But that's where all of Lake Nip is controlled. Because if the dam was taken out at Canoe Club, the water would actually recede. You would see a lot more vegetation near the shore, and the water level would be, you wouldn't see a beach. The water would be much further out.
Yeah, it's down pretty low this year already.
Well,
I mean,
I would
because-
say to you, that's because of the number of boards that have been taken out down in the Canoe Club. I would say that issue you may want to talk to Chris Inatelli about, because
I will.
because Chris Inatelli controls that. So if he were to put in more boards, the level of the lake would go up.
Yeah, that's not supposed to be done willy-nilly. I mean, you need to have a permit to do that, is what I've read about.
Well, he is the official willy-nilly.
So
He's
Okay.
the official
just not to
willy-nilly.
get off subject, that Mrs. Morrissey, just to give other people the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. All righty,
Yeah.
well, thanks all. Thank you.
Is there any other public members? I see some repetitive chats from Mr. Hunt and Mrs. Neary and Mrs. Hanson. Does anybody want to speak before we talk about continuing the public hearing? Because we still need a thorough review from the engineering department and comments from all other departments. Mr. Romulus, do you see anybody else that would like to speak?
It doesn't look like there's anything with new information. If anyone has anything that hasn't been discussed, I guess, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Silva, has this been to Concom yet or not yet?
It has been filed with Conservation Commission. I believe that the hearing is
First
this
hearing's
week, I
tomorrow
believe.
night, I think.
Yes, tomorrow, I think, yeah.
First
So
hearing.
so I think that's
First
another
hearing.
thing. I think that's another important thing for people to note, that the wetlands are under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, and they'll address that part of it.
It might not be till next week. I think it's next week that it's on.
So if there's no other public comments, do we have any board comments at this point?
No, Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question, and then I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
The question is, this is a warehouse, but just want to be clear, is this going to be open to retail clients coming in?
Mr. Silver, I believe it's designed as a flex space with either retail, office, or warehouse, correct?
Retail is allowed in the plan developed district as of right, but this
Just wanted to
building.
try to clarify, that's all.
is not orientated towards a retail clientele.
Okay. My motion is that based on the discussion today, I would like to do a site walk. And I'd like to make a motion that the planning board conduct a site walk of this place.
Okay, so before we do that, all right, so we could certainly do a site walk if the applicant's okay with us accessing the site, but I'd like to do it prior to September 2nd, so we can hopefully continue it to September 2nd if that's possible.
Are we going to have all the reports in by that time?
Well, so Mr. Romulus, this was submitted back in June, correct?
Yes, so the departments are aware of the September 2nd meeting and getting comments to us.
I mean, we need all board comments for the next meeting. It's like, it's this sat too long on somebody's desk, so.
We just hope that we have all the comments in. I mean, if there's a chance that it's not going to happen, then I would suggest we move it to the second meeting in September, not the first.
I think that we should have them all in.
Okay, but again, my motion is to do a site walk
Do
between.
you have a date in mind? Is that okay with Mr. Brennan, Attorney Brennan, excuse me, and Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Do you have a date in mind, Mr. Jemian?
No, I'm open to most dates.
Would you like to pick a date?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we do a site walk on this property a week from Friday. No, let's say a week from today, Wednesday.
Be the 26th.
Right.
Could we do late afternoon, Mr. Jemian?
Fine. Is that good for the rest of the board?
What time is good for the rest of the board?
Okay with me.
3:30, Mr. Jemian?
It's fine.
Okay.
So you're making a motion to have a site walk a week from today, which is what date, Mr. Jemian?
I'll make a motion that we have a site walk at 3:30 on August 26th. Wednesday, August 26th.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
I'll second
I'll
that.
second. Okay.
So, by Mr. McDonald. And then I have to do this roll call vote, so if there's no discussion, Mr. McDonald? Are you,
Yep. Sorry, is the microphone not working? Yeah.
so that's a yes, okay?
Yep.
Mr. Grano?
Yes.
Mr. Jemian?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, okay. So, do we have a motion to continue this public hearing?
Could I just ask a question first?
Sure.
Just about the snow. Is there snow storage or is it going to be removed or?
Mr. Sola?
Well, there's going to be snow storage. Obviously, it all depends on the significance of the storm event. In this site, because there is the flex part of it, we're not certain whether or not there's a portion of the parking area that may be used for part of that storage during really significant storm events. But most snow storage would be on site with the option of taking it off site if there was something that exceeded the capacity of the site to handle it.
And then just before we continue the vote to continue the public hearing, Mr. Romulus, anything that comes in regards to correspondence, can we make sure we get that to Mr. Silva's office?
Yes.
And the one we received from Mrs. Hanson on the 17th that was forwarded to the board, can you make sure Mr. Silva gets that as well? And I just had in my notes, you were also going to send him something about the Bedford Street project.
Yes.
And then,
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify where we're going to meet for that site walk?
sure.
There is at the end of Fruit Street, the paved section of Fruit Street. There is an entrance there that's not the right of way, but that's the way to get into the site. So I would say just go to the end of Fruit Street, and there's area there that we can park, which will not be in the way of the state operation.
So Mr. Silva, will somebody from your office be there to show us where things will be?
Yes, there will definitely be somebody there.
And Mr. Jemian, do you want anything marked out? Do you want the other corners of the building or anything marked out now, Mr. Silva?
They're not, you gotta understand, this is, you know, it is not marked out. If we were to mark it, you won't be able to see from one to the other.
Okay.
So I don't know if that helps you as much, but you tell me what you want and we'll try to accommodate it. Or I could actually make sure that I'm able to tell you where you are on the site in each juncture. I mean, that's really up to you at this point.
Mr. Jemian?
Fine. Do we need boots and mosquito repellent?
No, it's actually a very dry site. You might need mosquito repellent.
Okay.
So Mr.
Spray for ticks
Jemian,
too.
just so I'm clear, you're okay with nothing being staked out as long as somebody from Mr. Silva's office is there?
Yeah, as long as somebody knows where everything is.
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
This is Carlton Hunt, and I've had my hand up for about a half an hour.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Hunt, go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt, but number one, I think you do a great good if you could go into Google Earth, Larry, and lay out that location on the current land so that's a better idea when they go walk around. But the main point I wanted to make is in the chat box, Steve Rogan put a link to the 2018 MEPA study. And if people just click on that link now, you will go to that document. So I didn't want people to lose that and then get all wrapped around an axle. And I'm actually quite excited to hear that there might be manufacturing in this building because I'm aware of a local engineer who has put in a grant for a verification test of a new innovative alternative energy device. And if that's successful, I suspect they'll be looking for a manufacturing place. So this is the kind of thing we need to develop in this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Sorry we didn't see it. Okay, and we're gonna meet just on Fruit Street at the end of the road where the pile is, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then Mr. Romulus, you're gonna make sure this is all departments and we have a review to Mr. Silva's office timely so they can respond before the next meeting?
Yes, I will.
Okay. All right. If we don't have anybody else from the public that would like to say something before we continue it, I'd take a motion to continue to September 2nd at 6:30.
I'll make a motion to continue the Fruit Street project to September 2nd at 6:30.
Do we have a second?
I'll also make a second.
Second by Mr. Jemian. Any discussion from any board members?
I just saw a question whether the public can attend the site walk. Let me clarify that, Mr. Chairman.
It's private land, so I would assume it's up to the applicant. Is it up to the applicant? I'm unfamiliar with that. So is it up to the applicant or is it up to the board? Mr. Romulus or Attorney Brennan?
I'll have to verify on the public access. It does have to be notified to the public, so.
We do have to advertise it, yes.
Yeah, so
we don't, excuse me, we do have to post the public meeting. We don't have to advertise it.
Right, post it. So Melissa Raymondetta, if you can just comment with your email, I can get back to you regarding that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Mr. Jemian?
Nope, I'm all set.
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Jemian?
Yes.
Mrs. Garino?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that'll be, the site walk is scheduled and we'll continue the public hearing on September 2nd at 6:30.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And Mr. Ramos, just so the public knows, they can submit written comments to you.
That is correct. The email is ced@bridgewaterma.org.
Okay. Great. All right. So moving on with the agenda. We have minutes to be approved. The minutes are from 7:15:20 and 8:5:20.
Yep, I read them and emailed Les some just minor grammatical punctuation corrections.
Corrections Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the minutes, and would anybody like to make a motion on the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes with the corrections.
The Scrivener's errors that you provided to Mrs. Dorr.
Mrs. Dorr, yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That's Mr. McDonald. I didn't see it.
Yep.
Okay. So Mr. Ajemian,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Guarino,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Do we have any board committee or liaison reports at this point? No. And any directors' reports, Mr. Ramos?
Just an update. I sent an attachment from Mr. Dutton related to the Broad Street project. They'll just be working with the applicant on making sure that, so himself, Mr. Dutton, and Jennifer Burke, the director of CED, they will be working with the applicant to get all of the information to us. It looks like the earliest meeting may be September 16th, if they are able to get us all the information well ahead of time for us to review it.
Okay. So I think that when I asked Mrs. Burke that, they just have to have everything in by the 26th or the 27th to meet advertising, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other committee or board comments or questions?
Yeah, the CPC has made a decision on, a beginning decision on the Congregational Church to send to the council for monies for them to work on their steeple.
Okay. So if there's anything else, if there's nothing else, we can have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
By Mr. Jemian. Any discussion? So, Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino,
Yes.
Mr. Jemian,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Very easy.
All right, good night.
Night.
Good night.
Have a good one.